going to happen? Well, if there's just two kings on the board, can this king eat this king? No, because this guy can never get close enough to be in here because the kings are not allowed to go places where they attack each other. So the kings will never ever be close enough to each other to hurt each other. No matter where they go, they'll always keep a distance. It's never allowed for two kings to be next to each other because one of the kings will have had to move there and no king can go into a place where it's dangerous. So yeah, when there's only two kings on the board, we call that position a draw. So no one wins, no one loses, because there's no way either of these kings will ever kill each other. So it's just going to be a draw. On the other hand, sometimes in the end, someone manages to end up with an extra pawn. Now, the pawn is special because, okay, for example, right? There's no way to checkmate a king with another king. You just can't do it because there's no way to make him not be able to move anywhere. So you can't put a king in check with a king. There's also no way to checkmate a king with a knight. Just take my word for it. I'll show it to you later. But there's no way to checkmate a king with a knight. And that's because a knight doesn't cover enough squares. So even if I check him here, he can still move to a lot of places. Even if my king is here blocking off these two squares and I check him here, he can still go to this square and be safe. So there's no way to checkmate a king with a knight. On the other hand, there is a way to checkmate a king with a pawn. Not a pawn like this, but when the pawn reaches the very end of the board, something special happens. So does anyone know what happens to a pawn when it reaches the end?
You get another piece.
Yeah, you can transform this pawn. Sorry, not can. You have to transform this pawn into another piece. So either a queen or a rook or a bishop or a knight. One of those four pieces. Now you can't stay as a pawn. You have to transform. This is not allowed. You also can't make it into a king. You can't have two kings on the board. And also you're not allowed to change color either. You can't turn a white pawn into a black knight. Just not possible. It's just not allowed in the rules. So either you turn it into a queen, a rook, a bishop, or a knight, all of the same color. That's it. Now, of course, I just said you can't win with just a knight. So if you have a pawn and you get it to the end, make it something like a queen or a rook. That way you can checkmate the king. If it's like this, you can checkmate him with a rook, or you can checkmate him if you turn him into a queen. Queen is probably the easiest. So yeah, we call this promotion. So when a pawn promotes, it becomes a new piece. It transforms. It's just chess lingo. It means to transform into something else. So that's that. So the biggest problem people usually have is whether or not they can get the pawn to the end. For example, right now, there's no way to get the pawn to the end because I'll try, but his king is in the corner. So not only is he blocking me, but he'll probably kill my pawn. Or let's say here, right, in this position, I won't be able to get my pawn to the end because if I try and get my king there to protect my pawn, he'll die. And on the other hand, if I try and run and try and make it to the end before the king catches me, he will catch me. So you see, he'll catch me. He caught me. So a good thing to know is when he can catch you and when he can't catch you. So try and eyeball it here. Do you think the king will be able to catch my pawn before he gets to the end? Sorry, do you think the black king will be able to catch the pawn before he gets to the end? Let's say it's black's king's turn. Well, we can try it. So let's say he moves, I move, he moves, I move, he moves. And look, I got to the end before him. So he didn't manage to catch me there. What about here? Can he catch me now? Well, if it's his turn, let's see. He moves, I move, he moves, I move, he moves, I move, and yeah, he caught me. He kills me. So how you figure it out is first look at the pawn. Next, count how many squares he has to get to the end. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And count the pawn as well. So that's 5. Now you have to create a square that's the same length as here. So for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Imagine that there's a square with 5 as its side length, like this. This is the square. Now, if the black king can get into that square with one move, and it's black's turn, then he'll be able to catch you. You see, it's black's turn, and he can get into the square with one move. So he'll catch you. But if he can't get into that square with one move, then he won't be able to catch you. For example, here, okay, here's the square. Sorry, here's the square. Will he be able to get into that square in one move? No, it'll take him at least 2 moves to get into there. So he won't catch you in this case. And surely enough, pretty soon we can see that he doesn't catch you. You made it. Okay, so does that make sense? Hopefully it makes sense. Okay, let me ask you this then. Do you think the black king will catch this pawn? Yes or no? It's black king's turn. Will he catch the pawn? Yes or no? Yeah, I see people saying yes. So the first step is we make this square 5, 5, 5, 5. And now we see that the black king can go into that square in one move. Since he can go into that square in one move, then yeah, he will definitely be able to catch the pawn. Like that. And then you kill him. See, he caught him. Yay. Okay, so that's the first thing you need to know. Now, let's move on. So a lot of times, most of the time, the black king can get the pawn. If the black king can't get the pawn, like for example, let's say he's behind him, then you just push your pawn to the end and then get yourself a free queen. Okay, that's what you do if he can't catch your pawn. But if he can catch your pawn, then you're in this sort of situation like this. You usually have to use your king to help the pawn to get to the end. So like right now, this pawn can't go to there because the black king is in front of him. So the only way you're going to get your pawn to the end is if you use your king to escort the pawn, to like help him out and get him up there. So this is usually the position people are in, where the kings are facing each other and you have a pawn. Okay. Now, if it's white to move here, black can catch the pawn. And so it ends up as a draw. If it's black to move here, white is the winner. He will be able to get the pawn to the end. So let me show you how white wins if it's black's turn here. So here's how you win with white if it's black's turn in this situation. What you want to do is you want to always go to the opposite side of what black did, but you also want to move towards him by one square. So if he moves to the left, like this, what you want to do is move to the right, but you also want to be moving towards him. So you move to the right, but diagonally, you move here, okay? On the other hand, if he moves to the right, where do you think you should move? Yeah, to the left, but also up one because you want to move towards him. So you move left diagonally like this. Now, if he moves back, you just move back with him. Okay. So let me just show you. If he goes here, you go to the right. Now, one thing you're not allowed to do, you're allowed to do it, but you just shouldn't because then you won't win, is you're not ever allowed to bring the king, to bring the pawn next to the king or even ahead of the king. The pawn has to always be behind the king. So for example, let's say this happens and I bring the pawn up and now they're next to each other. Now you're not gonna win anymore. So you can't do that. You can't allow it to happen. If you want, you can bring it 1 up. That's okay. But you can't bring it 2 up. 2 up is bad. You can't bring it next to each other. On the other hand, if it was up here, yeah, you're allowed to bring it 2 up because look, he's still behind the king. You're not allowed to bring him up ahead of the king though. So let's say he moves to the left. Now you move to the right and diagonal. If he moves up, well, if he moved up, you can move up. Now, if he moves down and they're facing each other, you just want to bring the pawn up. Is it okay to bring the pawn up? Yeah, it's okay because he's still underneath the king. Okay. So let me just show you that one more time. Let's say he moves to the left. Which square do you think I should go to? Yeah, right here, F4. If he goes down, they're facing each other. Now I can bring my pawn up. Where do you think I should bring my pawn up? 1 square up or 2 squares up? 1 square up, yeah, so that he's still behind the king. So now he's in check. He'll probably move up here. And since he moved up, I also want to move up because it's the only thing I can really do. So I'll move up. He can't move down because he'll kill. So he moves up. Okay, since he moved up, we can go ahead and bring the pawn up because he's still below, right? So there's no problem yet. Go ahead, bring the pawn up. Now, what you want to do is you want to keep facing the king. So if he goes inside, you should also go inside. If he goes outside, you go outside. If he goes inside, you go inside. You just copy him, but you go the opposite direction. Okay? So let's start again. Let's say he goes here. Which square do you go to? F4, right. Let's say he goes here. So he went inside. Which square do you go to? He went inside. So you want to go inside too. This square, right? So now they're facing each other. Now, what if he goes to the left? What do you do then? If he went to the left, where do you go? If he goes left, I go right, but I go right 1 towards him, right? Now, let's say he comes down here and now they're facing each other. What should you do now? So you see, you can't go in because he's not in. You can't go left because he didn't go right or anything like that. So if the kings are facing each other, then there's only one other piece to move. Which piece is it? It's the pawn, right? So we have to move it as high as we can, but we can't move it ahead of the king. So I'll move it up 2 squares. He moves up, I'll move up. He moves up. I can move the pawn up because I like this position. Move the pawn up. He goes here. And what happens if he goes inside? What do we do then? If he moved inside, what should we do? So if he moves inside, we also move inside. If he moves outside, we also move outside. So like this. And let's say he goes to the right. This last one, where should we go? If he goes right, which should we go, left or right? Yeah, we have to go left. But we also have to go 1 towards him. So we go left and diagonal. And see now my king is protecting all 3 of these squares. So I can push my pawn up as much as I want. You can push your pawn ahead of the king when he's at the end, but never before. So now he made it and now he's a queen. You can't take because he's protected. Does that make sense? You want to bring the pawn all the way to the end, so you have to protect it. Great. So once again, if it's black's turn in this situation, white wins. Because if he goes left, you go right. If he goes inside, you go inside. If he goes right, you go left. If he goes inside, you go inside. And you can bring the pawn forward as long as he doesn't go in front of the king. So yeah. So yeah. Ba, ba, ba. Ba, ba, ba. Pretty soon you will get it to the end. There we go. Now, okay. So now let's flip the board. Now, let's imagine it's white's turn this time, okay? If it's white's turn this time, black can actually draw the game. So if it's black's turn, white wins, but if it's white's turn, black gets to draw the game. Here's how he does it. If white moves to the left, black follows him. So he's like, yeah, I'll go to the left too. If white moves to the right, black follows him. If white moves backwards, black follows him. So basically, at the beginning, do exactly what white does. So if he goes up here, he went one up to the left. I'm going to go one up to the left too. Okay? If he goes here, where should I go? He went one right. So what should I do?
Right.
Yeah, one right. Right? You just follow him. Eventually, he'll get tired and he will have to push his pawn forward. And you see now he has pushed his pawn ahead of his king. You see, his pawn is ahead of the king. And so now you're going to win, or at least draw. This is why we don't want to push our pawns ahead of the king when it's our turn. So now you can go ahead and go here in the center. Sorry, you go here. Now, this is the big important piece, big part from here on out. If he's on a white square, you want to stay on a white square. So right now, of these 4 squares, you can go to the right, you can go down, or you could go here. Which one do you think you should go? If he's on a white square, you want to stay on a white square. Whatever color he is, you want to stay on that color. So which one do you think you should go? Which of these 3 should you go to?
White.
Yeah, the white E3. If he goes here, you want to go to a black square, but you want to stay on his side. So you want to follow him. Let's say he does this. Which square should you go to? Because he's checking you. Which square should you go to?
E7.
E7, good job. Now, if he goes here to E4, you can choose to, you want to stay close to him. So you want to actually, since he's in the center, you want to stay in the center. So let's go to the center white square. If he goes to the right, we want to go, well, we want to go to the black because we don't want to go on a white square when he's already on a black square. So we want to come here. Now, what if he goes down? What do you think you should do then? He's on a white square, so we know that we shouldn't go to any of these squares. So which square do you think we should go to? One of these white ones, right? Now he's on the right, so where should we go? We want to follow him.
E8.
So no. We want to follow him. So if he's on the right, we go to the right. If he was in, for example, the center, we want to go to the center. If he's on the left, go, except when he's on the left. When he's on the left, we can't go to the left because he'll check us. So we want to go to the other black square. So yeah, So where do we go here? He's on a white square and he's on the right. So where should we go? We have 4 white squares. Yeah, D7, because it's a white square and it's on the right. Good job. Now he pushes a pawn. Where should we go? Well, he's on a white square, so we have to go to a white square. So we can either go here or here.
Where?
不知道，你觉得呢？ Which one
Well,
better?
pawn is here, right? You don't want to go away from the pawn. So which one's closest to the pawn?
Which is close to the pawn?
Two options.
E8.
Yeah, good job. E8. Now, if he goes here, he goes to a black square and it's in the center. So you want to go to a black square that's in the center. If he goes here, he goes to a white square. So we have to go to a white square. Because we can't go to this white square because he'll kill us. So we have to go to this white square. And now the last one, what if he goes here? It's a black square on the left. So where do we go? Well, these are the black squares. And which one's on the left? F8. Good job.
F8.
Yeah. And now he checks you. And now you want to stay close to the pawn and there's nowhere to go. So you have to go to E8. And if he goes here, then it's actually a draw. If he goes here, then you have successfully drawn the game because your king cannot go anywhere from here because anywhere it goes, it will die. You see all these places, his king will kill you. These 2 places, the pawn will kill you. And you're not in check. So if you can't move and you're not in check, it's called the stalemate and it's a draw. So congratulations, you have made a stalemate. So going back to this position, we know now that if it's his turn, if it's white's turn, then we can draw this game simply by following where he goes and staying on the same color that he is. So if he's on the white and he's on the right, we should stay on the right and be on the white. Okay. Same thing here. Here he's on the white. So we're going to go on a white. If he goes here, he's on the black. So we're going to go on a black. It's not too difficult, but yeah, it does need some practice. So you should practice this on your own time. See, here's on the black. So I'm going to stay on the black. Good. Now, that's very important to know. So if you have a white pawn or a black pawn, if you ever get to a pawn and king endgame, now you know how to win. Now, of course, if you have more than a pawn, like for example, if you have 2 pawns, then it's only going to be easier to win, right? Or if you have 2 pawns and a knight, then it's going to be even easier. But the smallest advantage you can have at the end is you could be up by a pawn. And so now I've shown you how to win if you're just up by a pawn. That's all you really need to win the game. Okay, now that's that. Once you get your pawn to the very end, you will have a queen. Now, most of the time, it's a good idea to make it a queen. So like this. When you have a queen, you want to try and start checkmating him. Now, how you start checkmating him with a queen is like this. First, you have to look at all the places your queen attacks. So my queen attacks here. My queen attacks all the way down here. Okay? That means all of these squares are on his territory. All of this stuff is the king's space. So you see, he has a lot of space to move around. but he can never actually have he can never have more than this space, because the king cannot go across this line. For example, if my queen was here, these would be the places my queen would cover. And now all of these places are the place his kings can go to. Does that make sense? So where your queen is affects where his king can move to. And what you want to do is you want to move the queen so that the king has less and less space. So for example, let's say the king is here, okay? Your queen has all of this, the opponent's king has all of this space to go to. Do you think that I could put my queen in another square so that he has less space? Where do you think I should put my queen so that the king has less space to move to? Can anyone come up with one?
8.
Sorry, which one? So I can't go to A8 or B8. Why do you guys think I can't go to A8 or B8? Why would I say that? What would happen if I go to B8, for example?
Die.
Yeah, he'll kill me.
The black king will kill you.
Yeah, so let's not go to this square or this square. Or for example, I can't go to this square because he'll kill me. But I can go to almost any other square. I can go to this square, for example. So you see here, I won't let him go to any of all these squares he can go to. But if I, for example, move my queen here, you see now he has one less row that he can go to. He has less space than before. The best place is actually probably over here, because now he can only move to these 9 squares. Okay? So what you want to do is once he moves, you want to make him have even less space. So now the best square here for me to move to would probably be to this square right here, or even this square right here. Because look at all the space he has right now. If I move my queen up to this square right here, now he has far less space, don't you think? Yeah. So what we want to do is we want to keep making him have less and less space like this, slowly, until he has only space for one row. You see, he only can go up and down right now. Once he can only go up and down, what we want to do is we want to keep our queen there and we'll bring our king in. So he'll move, we'll move, he'll move, we'll move, he'll move, we'll move. He'll move, we'll move, he'll move, we'll move. Until our king is 2 squares away from his king. When our king is 2 squares away from his king, all we have to do is we have to bring our queen right next to his king so that our king is protecting the queen. And this will be checkmate. So yeah, so let me just show you one example of how you would checkmate your opponent. So like this and this. So right now he has all these places to move, right? All of them. He can move to every single one. All of them he can move to. Let's say it's my turn. I'm going to bring my queen down. I'll bring my queen here. Okay. Now that I bring my queen here, his king can only move to these squares. Like that. Now he'll probably go here. And I'm going to bring my queen here. So you see now he can only move left and right, right? And once he can only move left and right, what we want to do is we want to bring our king so that our king is 2 squares away from his king. And once his king is 2 squares away from ours, we can bring our queen right next to his king so that our king is protecting the queen, and then it's checkmate. Does that make sense? it's really it is kind of complicated, but once you understand the idea of space, so his king has this much space and I want to make him have less and less space, then it will become easier. So right now his king doesn't have much space because he can only move left and right. Here, his king has more space because he can go all the way around. If his king goes here, where should I move my queen so that he can only move left and right? Yeah, I can't see where you're pointing to, unfortunately.
Up.
Yeah, up. Up by how many squares? Like all the way up or up here, or where were you thinking? So if I move up twice, it will give him a check and now he can move down. Now this is what we have. We don't want that because he can still move everywhere. So let's move up only once. And now these are the lines and he can only move left and right, right? Okay, good. So that's that. Now, that is all I'm going to talk about the end game for today. I'll talk about it more later, but for now, I think you guys are probably tired of the end game. So let's talk about something called pins. Okay. So right now, is the king allowed to go into this square? No, why not? So he can't, why not?
Because the bishop will kill it.
Yeah, and the king is not allowed to make a move that will hurt itself. In fact, no black piece is allowed to make a move that will hurt the king. So for example, right now, can the knight move here? Well, if the knight moves here, then the bishop will kill the king. And no black piece is allowed to make a move that will hurt the king. So you see, this piece cannot make a move. He can't move anywhere where the king will get hurt. So if he moves here, the king will get hurt because this bishop will hit it. So can this guy move anywhere? I think I didn't explain that correctly. So if you have a piece, black piece, he can't move. He can't move to a place where the king will be hurt. So right now, for example, if the knight moves to this place, the king will be hurt because the bishop will kill it. If the knight moves here, the king will be hurt because the bishop will kill it. So is the knight allowed to move to any place? No, he's not, because what will happen if he moves here, for example? What will happen if the knight moves here?
He'll get killed.
Yeah, the king will get killed. So that's why the knight is not allowed to move. So what we say is that the knight is pinned to the king. So imagine like a pin, he's stuck. So the knight can't move because if he ever moves anywhere, the bishop will kill the king. What about in this situation? Okay. Can the knight move anywhere? Hold on, let's do it like this. Can the knight move anywhere? No. What will
No,
happen if he moves here?
he'll get killed.
Yeah, the king will get killed. So what is the knight? The knight is pinned to the,
Stop it, Nathan.
yeah, the knight is pinned to the king. So you don't need to do it with the king. You can pin anything to anything. As long as the thing behind it is more powerful. So for example, you can pin a knight to a queen like this. What that means is if I move the knight, the queen will die. You can also pin a pawn to a queen, right? You can pin a pawn to a queen this way. So now, is this pawn gonna move?
No.
Well, no, because if he moves, then he just loses a queen. So he would never do that. That is what it means to pin. So yeah, pinning like this. So you can pin things with a bishop, a queen, or a rook. Those are the only three pieces that can pin other pieces. So a bishop can pin like this. So you see now if the pawn moves, he dies. A rook can pin like this. So you see now if the queen moves anywhere, if the queen moves, then the rook will kill the king. It's pinned. And a queen can pin like a bishop or a rook. So you see now if the knight moves, the queen will kill the king. Or for example, here, it's pinning like a rook. So if the knight moves, queen will kill the king. Okay? So that is what pinning is. Now, there's a lot of ways to get out of pins. One way to get out of pins is to move the guy behind. So you see, if I move my king like this diagonally, then is that knight pinned to the king anymore? No, because I moved the king out. So if the knight moves now, he won't be able to kill anything because there's nothing to kill. So we can do that. Another way is if you put something in between the queen and the king, like the knight and the king, sorry, like this, he's no longer going to pin the king. For example, can this knight move now? Yeah, he can move because I won't kill the king. So here's the challenge to you guys. Let's say I'm playing in the opening. And so I'm trying to get these pieces out. And let's say I do this. Sorry. Yeah. And he does this, and I do this, and he does this. First off, what piece is pinned? Is there any pieces that are pinned here? There's one piece that's pinned here. Which piece is it? Anyone have any ideas? So this bishop is pinning this knight to this king. You see? So if the knight moves, can the knight move here, for example? No, because the bishop will kill the king. Okay. How do I stop this pin? Is there any way to stop this pin? Can I put a piece in between the king and the knight so that, like here, for example, so that it stops the pin? Have any ideas?
The queen.
Yeah, you can put the queen here. And that is actually even a better piece to put there. Is there any other piece you can put there? Yeah, go ahead.
The bishop.
Yeah, and the bishop is even better because if I move the knight, he will only kill a bishop and then I can kill him back. But if I put a queen there, like this, now if I move the knight, he will kill a queen, right? So it's usually better to put the weakest piece in between the two, like a bishop, okay? Or if you had a knight, so for example, oh, yeah, like this, sorry. So yeah, like if it was this situation, you could also put this knight in this square. And now if I move a knight, he can kill the knight, but I'll kill it back. So yeah, if you're gonna break a pin, try and break it with a low worth piece. So a bishop breaking a pin is fine. But if you put a queen there instead, like this, then it's not as great because now the knight is pinned to the queen. Okay, that's all I'm going to cover for this class. Does anyone have any questions? No.